I was curious to hear like more about what you're doing with Hoppers and digital nomads. And it's funny because like obviously I sent you very limited information on Cambridge and the event that we held, but I think there were a handful of people that are interested in like the digital nomad ecosystem in Korea. So I guess to start, could you just give a brief introduction about what you do in Seoul?
Yeah, so I run a company called Hoppers, and from Hoppers, we have two main projects, which is Digital Nomads Korea and Hopin. So Digital Nomads Korea, I will just call it DNK shortly. Yeah, DNK is a free community. It's an open community for everyone, but targeted to digital nomads coming to Korea. But also there are people who are interested in digital nomads, like local people interested in nomads, and want to hang out and learn and get inspired from these people. So there are mainly like two types of people in this community. So like demographic wise, our community is majority are from the Western countries. And they stay here for about 1 month to 3 months.
Okay.
And some of them are starting to get the digital nomad visa, so they're staying here longer period. And yeah, we host a lot of events. We used to host more events, but recently it's been, we're trying to keep more events hosted. And we started doing like workation events to travel around in Korea. For like remote working trips. Yeah. So we went to Busan and Jeju last year. We stayed in Busan for 1 month, and there were 80 people who joined this program.
Okay.
So people could stay for 1 month or like from 1 week to 1 month. So there were like 30 people staying for 1 month, and a few of them were staying like from 1 week to like 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Okay. And so you go by Jeong, right?
Yeah.
Is that most people call you Jeong or Jeonghyun?
Jeong.
Okay, Jeong. And can you tell me a little bit about like how you started it and how long you've been working on like DNK and the Hoppers community for?
I started my company Hoppers 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
And then for about 1.5 years, I was struggling to find a business model as a startup. And I started with like a product design for like furniture design for digital nomads. But yeah, it was difficult to find the product market fit. So I was pivoting, and yeah, I tried a different business models, business ideas. And then like I got some ideas from like by talking to many people, I got the idea of like, oh, like this is maybe a niche market, but there is not really much solution, which was digital nomads or like international people coming to Korea and looking for workspace. So my business model, like the product design, the furniture, was also about like workspace, alternative workspace for digital nomads. And from from providing a physical space for nomads, trying to create a new type of physical space, which was actually so to go more specific about it, it was about outdoor office. So providing a space to work outdoors in the nature. So that was my business idea during COVID.
I see.
So why do we have to like stay indoor and in a box?
Yep.
Can we go outdoor? Like how do we source electricity and get the internet and like have a more ergonomic settings in the outdoor space? So that was my first idea.
Okay.
But yeah, in Korea, I think there was not enough demand for this idea, and it was quite hard for me to figure out like the right path to sell this idea and create something. So I was looking into a few different directions, but then I was genuinely interested in creating a space for people and connecting people through this space. And from there, like I was interested in co-working space and who are using the co-working space and how can they use it more efficiently, and also how can they meet other people here more efficiently. How can they meet like-minded other people in this place, in this new place, alternative workspace? So that was ambiguous, but like that's some of the areas I wanted to touch on from my business. And yeah, then I looked into this like digital nomad industry, and I thought there is a lot of potential also with the government's interest, and this can also be relevant to solving some like social issues in Korea, about like decreasing population and trying to bring more population in the regional areas on the suburb of not the capital area, the other like small cities.
Yep.
So yeah, that all kind of meet my interest also from my previous career, which was I was an urban planner. So that was actually my interested topic before starting this company. So somehow it was all relevant of these topics. And yeah, I thought like, trying to create a community for digital nomads, providing a workspace or place to gather, creating a community. This is something I would be very interested in doing. And I could see a lot of interest from the like government and business side as well, and also the demand side. So I thought, there could be something I could do here. So I wasn't very clear like how I can make a business in the beginning, but I thought I should start with creating a community. And then from that community, I can figure out what people want. So what kind of service I can provide to them. So yeah, so like around 2 years ago, I started Digital Nomads Korea through like just organizing a few meetups, and then started like branding and marketing as this with this name.
Yep. And
yeah, I could see the product market fit because it was growing very fast in the beginning with doing a lot of meetups.
Makes sense. So at the Cambridge event that I held, I guess it was maybe more than a week ago now, the majority of the demographic was like Korean diaspora people, right? Like Korean Americans or Korean Canadians. But there was also a subset of like Koreans that also had some international exposure and spoke English well. And so one thing I was curious about, and I'll probably ask you more about the like early days of the DNK and Hoppers and starting that out, but like your own like personal background and like international experience as well. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I would say I'm like pure like Korean national. So why I have this like accent is because I lived in US when I was very young, like for 1 year with my family. So I lived in Boston and did my first year elementary school in Boston.
Okay.
And then I came back. So from second year elementary school, I just grew up in Seoul until like I went to university here. And during my university, I went to exchange program in Singapore, and I did like 1 year gap year and went to Germany because I wanted to like study in German country, like German speaking country for my master degree. So, but I didn't at the end. But yeah, so I lived in Germany for around 8 months. And then for my master degree, I went to London. So I stayed there for 6 months.
And is that that international experience, like, is that fairly common for a lot of like Korean college students? Do they typically do some sort of exchange program abroad, or do you think your situation was a little bit unique?
I would say exchange program, it's not too uncommon from among my friends. Yeah, like all university have these programs, and you can select to do like go to this direction and spend your time in another country. I personally really wanted to like study abroad since I was young because of the early exposure of foreign experience. And I wanted to study, like do my university in the States or abroad, but I didn't have the chance. So when I had the chance, like I really looked into like what kind of program I could do when I went to university. Yeah.
Okay. And your major in undergrad, because you said you did masters in urban planning? Yeah.
So in undergrad, I did architecture.
Okay.
And for masters, it was urban design and city planning.
So at that point, like there was no aspiration or goal to become a founder necessarily, or do your own startup?
I think I had when I was studying architecture, I wanted to do my own like studio when I graduate. Like if I become an architect, I wanted to do my, like, it's not a startup, but I wanted to do my own thing. Like
some independent project.
Because I think I never wanted to like work for a company for a long time.
Sure.
Yeah. But so before going to doing my master degree, I did work for 1.5 years in a company. And after that, like I thought like, okay, this is like it. I don't want to go back to a company anymore.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And so you had mentioned like the early days of the, I guess like outdoor co-working type of experimentation happened COVID timeframe, right? So were you had just graduated, and then like once COVID happened, then you started to try and do your own independent startup?
So time-wise, so I went to London to do my master degree. And before that, when I was working for like a Korean company, I was working like as a researcher consultant for smart cities. And this was kind of the topic, like remote work, how it can impact on building more sustainable cities.
Yep.
And as a designer, I was looking into like what are the possible like urban design solutions. And that was further my research topic when I went to London. So that was my thesis topic, like remote work and urban design.
Interesting.
And then COVID started during my research.
Wow. So it was a perfect timing and
it was kind of timing. Like I was like, wow, what's going on? I thought this was very like futuristic research.
Wow.
But then everything was being like the new normal, like the research topic.
Yeah.
And things are going more and more crazy. Like there is all this like social distancing 2-meter like circle in the park. And that's where I got the idea of like, wow, people actually not in Korea, because people had more, like we were not really under lockdown. So we didn't have that much like harsh regulation of going out and stuff. But in London or like other Western metropolitan cities, there were a lot of more urban design wise, like quite shocking phenomenon happening. And how people use the city was being different, becoming more creative. And there are like, wow, there could be a lot of new solutions. So that was an interesting, it was a sad moment in the world, but as a researcher, it was like, wow, this is so interesting. So what could I do? Like how could the city become more accommodating for remote workers? So what if people don't have to commute? Like how are we going to provide workspaces for all these people, and how can they just live more sustainably in the cities, like with more walking, like not commuting, but they will be commuting to their closer workspace by walk instead of using cars. So what does this mean, and how can we make this city more sustainable with this concept? So that was my research topic. And one of the idea was to create an outdoor workspace. Like how can we utilize this free space in the public space and make it a more environmentally like friendly workspace. So yeah, that all comes through. But what was your question?
No, I think that was the gist of the question, was like kind of how did you get into that in the first place, which makes sense. So you were experimenting with this like outdoor workspace, and then how did you kind of morph it into like DNK and Hoppers?
Yeah. So I think your question before was like how I started my company from like going to London. So after, like during my London, COVID started, so I had to come back to Korea, and I graduated remotely, like doing my thesis in my room. And that's where like I thought like, oh, like all my kind of career plan going to London, and I wanted to go to work in a consulting company in London, but that was all kind of canceled. So in Korea, I was like from blank sheet, like starting new, like what do I do now? I graduated and this was not my plan. And at the same time, this research topic was being so timely, and I was so interested in doing something within this topic, and I couldn't find any company or research center doing something similar. So I wanted to do like this on my own if there is nothing where I can join. And luckily I could see there's a lot of like government funding for startups and young entrepreneurs. So I applied for one of those, and then that's how I started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So the even though you always had like a passion for doing some sort of like an independent project, you never necessarily thought that you would become a founder and do this digital nomad stuff necessarily.
Yeah,
it
that
kind of
was,
happened.
Yeah, it kind of happened. Yeah.
Okay.
I was just planning to go to a company that do something relevant.
Yep.
But there was no option. So yeah.
And at the time, like when you first decided to start this company and like try and raise some like even government funding, did you have like a network of people in the startup ecosystem, or did you just learn about this pretty independently?
I would say pretty independently. I had one friend, one just like friend who does startup, and he was a co-founder and CTO. So that was like one person in my personal network who was in the startup scene. So I was like asking him and bugging him a lot of like, how do I do this? Like, where do I start? But yeah, I think back then I had really like almost zero network.
Wow. Wow. And like even at the time in terms of digital nomads that you had been exposed to in Korea, like did you know of some? Were you like friends with some? Were you in any digital nomad communities globally?
No. So only I knew digital nomad term and I was familiar with it because I had some digital nomad friends during my travel and when I was like in overseas as a student. I met just a few friends who were working remotely as a software engineer, and they were starting like doing digital nomads on Instagram. Like, okay, what is this? How are they traveling in Bali? So that was quite shocking, but very inspiring because I really aspire that freedom when I'm working as well. So I learned about like remote work and digital nomadism, and that's why I was interested in that research topic as well, as also a solution for bringing like new population and creating community to solve urban problems. Yeah, so that was like my initial inspiration of this whole topic. But then I didn't really look into that specific topic when I started my company. It was more of like, what is the alternative space, physical space option for remote workers and remote working, but not really specifically the international digital nomads, the travelers itself.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And I guess like even today in terms of the like co-working spaces or like the co-living spaces, like could you give a summary of, you mentioned also the workation like program as well. Can you give kind of like an overarching summary of what you like run and manage? And I guess even if there like some partnerships that you are working in collaboration with other entities in Korea?
So as side of Digital Nomads Korea and kind of a part of it because we are serving the Digital Nomads Korea community. So I'm running Hop In House. It's a co-working and co-living space. It's a renovated house of like 3 stories and it's located in Yeonnam-dong. So yeah, first floor is a co-working space and second and third floor there are 5 rooms, maximum 10 people live together. Gotcha. And so this is the only house we are operating at the moment. Okay. But we did more like a pop-up co-work and co-living experience in many places, including Busan and Jeju. And these locations, these programs, we collaborated with the local government, Busan City and Jeju province.
Interesting. Okay. And to your knowledge, are there other, I guess, like companies that have popped up over the course of the last few years that are doing something similar or not really? Because I haven't really seen anything like digital nomads branded in Korea.
In Korea, there is a co-living space. Okay. Yeah. But like, I don't think other companies are targeting like very specifically to digital nomads. They're more like, Koreans and international community, or there are a lot of like co-living brands for Koreans, but when the co-living concept is, I think, slightly different from what we like our co-living, because we are sharing a house, while a lot of the co-living brands like such as Episode, Mangrove, or these like big companies, they are sharing a shared amenities, some shared space, but they have all their separate rooms. And I think it's majority staying there are Koreans.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, interesting. And in terms of how people find out about the house, is it like mostly word of mouth, or is it like through specific like, I don't know, digital nomad communities?
Yeah, so because we have Digital Nomads Korea channel, like we are using that channel as a sort of like a funnel to advertise our house.
On YouTube? Is it like a channel on YouTube, or what do you mean?
It's Instagram, and it's also like a meetup, events, and
different social media
website.
Channels. Gotcha.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And yeah, so far, and then we also have our own Instagram channel and website for Hoppin.
And over the last 4 years, in terms of the different trends that you've seen of how many digital nomads are coming and what demographics they are, has it been like steady, or is it pretty like up and down?
So it's not 4 years, it's around 2 years.
Okay.
I started this community. I think demographic wise, there's not much like huge difference going on so far. And I think there was a surge of interest when there was the digital nomad visa launched. Like we can also see that from our like website traffic and our community traffic. It was like on the peak level. But then I think it was quite consistently growing.
Okay.
And the demographic, it is mostly Western, like from US or Europe country digital nomads. And
do you see other people of like Korean Americans or like Korean Australians that come through as well?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not accurate number, but just in my head and from the people I've met on my head data, I think around 10% were Korean like diaspora.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, the business that you run is pretty tied to like tourism interests, right? Or I guess like digital nomad interests in general. I would imagine that like government regulations is very consequential, right? Like in terms of the things that you think could be changed that would be most beneficial to facilitating more foreigners in Korea, like what are the biggest levers from your perspective?
That's a hard question.
Because like I'm curious, even with the digital nomad visa. Right? That was released last year, and is that over at this point?
No, it's continuing. Yeah.
Okay. Like are there a lot of people in your community that end up trying to get that or getting that?
Yeah, there are, I think, more than like people think. There are more, there's quite a lot of people applying for this and interested. Some are interested but cannot meet the requirement, or like waiting for some things to get the system to get more improved and more like simple, because in the first few months and like the first trial year last year, there was a lot of like confusion of like what are they talking about, like all the embassies are not like well communicated with the Korean government. So there were some issues in the first few months, but I think now it's getting much better. But recently there are still like some unclear issues about like how is it going to work with the tax, and like was it available to extend 1+1, because it was 1+1 year. There was not much information about how are we extending and until when can we do this. But so far people are available to extend, so it's ongoing. But we are trying to talk more with this Ministry of Justice who are in charge of this system. But yeah, so far we haven't like made a direct connection with them. So this is also one of our like to-do list this year, like to communicate with them. And also since we have a lot of data about what is the difficulty from the community of applying this visa, we want to analyze these data by survey or doing a lot of like hearings, and we want to communicate like convey this data and this information to the government. So yeah, that's one of our potential project.
I see. Well, it's it's interesting. It's at least exciting that they have some open lines of communication in terms of taking feedback, right? Because
there's not.
Oh, there isn't.
Open line of communication.
I thought you said you were having discussions with like the Ministry of Justice.
That's my plan.
Oh, that's your plan.
We don't have the open line communication, so I'm just like, where do I talk to the who do I talk with?
Oh, okay.
Because we have like called a few times when it started, but we didn't get any response to like hear from our side. But recently I've been talking with someone who's doing the research to improve this regulation from the government side. So yeah, I'm trying to talk to this person and make like a seminar for digital nomads to share what's going on right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it's very recent. But last year there was not much happened.
Right. Because even for somebody like myself, if I wanted to get the digital nomad visa, like because I'm not formally employed by, a corporation, even if I had the funds to sustain myself while I'm here, I just can't like get the visa because of those requirements. So it's kind of unfortunate that some of there's not like other requirements that you can meet, beyond I think it was like $66,000 or something like that. Yeah.
I think, to answer your question of like how the government like system or regulation can be improved for this community, like I think the lowering the requirement would be like prime first thing to do.
Yep.
Because also recently there's a Taiwan launched the digital nomad visa, and their system is a lot much easier. Like the requirements are much lower. So, but there are like pros and cons. I think like their visa is much shorter. So there are pros and cons, but it can be a competition if people looking into like Western people coming to Asia, they will put Japan, like Korea, Japan, and Taiwan on the table and like, which are right for me. Of course, there will be other reasons to decide where to go.
Right.
But if they are interested in visa, and if like this could be a comparison, like so if we don't have stronger or more welcoming visa requirements, then we could lose a lot of potential people who want to stay like long term in our country. So
yeah. And do you see that like a decent amount where somebody comes, they like live in the house for like a month or two, and then they would like to stay longer, but then they end up leaving just because they have visa issues? Is that a pretty common occurrence?
Oh, so actually this is one of the misconception of the digital nomad visa. I think people would be able to come back to Korea. Like this length of stay doesn't matter too much of like why they're applying the digital nomad visa. And that's why people don't have to apply the digital nomad visa. And like so how to make it more clear? So people come to Korea and do the digital nomad experience, usually by visitor visa.
Just a tourist visa.
Tourist visa.
Yeah.
And tourist visa, it's in the gray area, but if you go abroad and then come back, like it's renewed.
Yep.
So this is how people usually like stay longer, and like there is no regulation to that. Like
the benefit of the digital nomad visa is mostly convenience of living in Korea.
Yeah,
longer
because
term, right?
the visa means you are getting the alien registration card, and that allows a lot of things, a lot of more convenient lifestyle. In Korea, accessing the online services like delivery service, for example. And this is a strong reason, a strong benefit in Korea, but not as much in Japan or maybe Taiwan. I'm not too sure. So I think this is like the main reason why people apply for the digital nomad visa. Not too much about the length of what they get provided. But of course, if you get the length, then there is a benefit of like you can get a longer term housing in a more affordable price. So that is one of the benefits that the long term allows. But I think the majority of the nomads who apply for this visa because they can always come back with a tourist visa if that's the only issue of the length of the term. Yeah, they are applying the visa because of the convenient lifestyle the ARC allows you.
That makes sense. And most of the like backgrounds or the reasons why people come to Korea, like are they coming to Korea for like a month or 2 months and then they go to Japan and then they go to another country? Like are they country hopping often, these digital nomads? Is that fairly common?
Yeah, very common.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. And since we learned about that through our also like data of like surveys and hearing from the nomads, now we're also quite expanding our projects abroad to Japan. So we do some workation events in Japan for nomads coming to Korea. So it's more like a short trip because all Japan and Taiwan government has the same demand doing workation and attracting digital nomads. So we've also been exploring this overseas market right now.
Cool. And have you learned like going to other countries, like their digital nomad communities or houses? Like have you learned a lot from observing how other communities run theirs as well? I imagine that like DNK and Hoppers, like it's a thing in Korea. It's probably a bunch of other countries are doing something similar. Do they have a similar approach for the most part?
I think in Asia, like Korea and Japan has quite similar approach. I think Korea, Japan, Taiwan have quite similar approach in terms of how like government is involved and trying to support this kind of industry and market. While I think in other countries, it's not as much like funding from the like direct funding from the government for these kind of projects.
Okay.
But in also like other European cities where they are targeting digital nomads as in the tourism department, they do get heavily involved like with these kind of initiatives.
Interesting.
So there were, when we started, we did look into other country successful cases, and it was mostly European cases.
And a big part of the reason why they were successful is because they had government support, or there were certain regulations.
So it was government support, but it was not only like I've looked into a lot of cases. There were cases with a lot of government support, but the real success stories come from the community. Like where the community, like the strategy of like building a nice community and doing a great marketing through events or some sort of like community activities or online community support.
And when it comes to like what makes a good community versus a weaker one, like what are some of the things that stand out? I think as somebody who's building like Cambridge and there's a piece of maybe like 25 to 30% of the people are like people that are recurring, and then like 70% are people that come and that go. I'm also curious about other communities and what would make them successful.
I don't know. I can talk about key to success for community in general, but for digital nomad community, based on my research of like, or what I found, like, oh, this is a successful case in other countries, I thought like creating a free community was very important. So that was the reason why I started like Digital Nomads Korea free community. But also I was struggling as a startup. It doesn't make sense. Like there is no business model to run a free community, because the cases I looked into in other countries that was funded by the government. That's why it was free. But I had no government funding, and I just started a community for free and trying to advertise Korea as a nomad destination where there is no government support. So, but when I started this, I thought, okay, this is something Korean government would be interested. I would be able to get funding after like 6 months if I brand it well.
Yeah, but I'm curious, like why the free aspect? Like what about it being free made it more successful or interesting?
Because there is no like access
Access
barrier.
Yeah. But isn't it possible that if it's a paid society or, paid community, that the expectations or like the quality of the community would be higher because people have like more time and energy to
Right.
invest in that community?
Yeah. So that's why I started Hoppin. So Hoppin is not non-free it's a paid community.
Okay.
So, but Digital Nomads Korea. So first I thought there should be a market. Like there was no market in Korea for digital nomads because no tangible market. Because no one was doing this. No government was doing like this initiative. So there was a lot of digital nomads, but they were all separate and there was no meetups or events or like online community for these people. So that's why I started the Digital Nomads Korea community to have a grasp of people and gather people in one place. And when I did this, I wasn't clear like where this is going to lead me to. But after I was doing a lot of meetups with nomads and hearing from like more than 100 people, I got the idea like, okay, they have demand for co-working, co-living, and workation programs. So that's why I started this Hoppin separate brand for doing these more like paid events and paid infrastructure for paid services for nomads.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Very interesting. Okay. And in terms of like 2024 and the experimentation and like some of the highlights, like what you're most excited about continuing in 2025, can you do like a quick summary of some of the events that you've held or the workation kind of trips that you did?
Summary of 2024?
Yeah, I guess like highlights in 2024 and also like what your plans are for 2025, because you said that there's a lot going on. So I'm just curious in terms of what you're most excited about.
So in 2024, the highlights would be Hoppin Busan and Hoppin Jeju, which is the 1 month and 1 week workation experience in 2 cities, and running Hoppin House in Seoul. So I would say we had like 3 branches. And Digital Nomads Korea was always like ongoing, mainly in Seoul. But last year, because of doing these 3 like projects, I couldn't like focus a lot on Digital Nomads Korea free community, because also it was not like I didn't get like direct funding to run this project, and I have to have like friends to support, but I cannot pay them. So I couldn't find like a sustainable model to expand this community. So it was very slow in that sense. But the digital nomad visa and trying to support them through like a online channel, that was one of the thing we did on the first quarter. Like, because that was when all the traffic was coming in. So that would be the summary of 2024. And this year, based on these experiences, we will definitely do Hoppin Busan and Hoppin Jeju again. The dates are not yet announced, but it will be roughly Jeju in spring and Busan in summer or autumn. So we're talking with the government to continue this project, but the scale and the dates are not yet official. And we will do small like workation retreats in a few places in Japan and maybe also in Taiwan. So we will do more collaboration with overseas countries.
Interesting. Cool.
And yeah, Hoppin House, our kind of core business. So these are like workations are events, and Hoppin House is our core business, like running a space and offering like a longer term service, housing and co-working infrastructure for nomads. So we plan to expand this starting in Seoul. Wow. Yeah.
That's exciting.
But very, very open. So we're looking for accommodation partners right now. Okay,
cool. Yeah, I'm specifically interested for some of the workation dates too, because even for me, I've been here for like 3 or 4 months, and my whole time has been spent in Seoul, and I don't have like a good excuse to like visit Busan or Jeju aside from like I should do that. So if I can join one of the events, these like
it's
programs,
a perfect excuse.
Yeah, exactly. And I imagine that there's other people that cross paths with the Cambridge ecosystem who would also find those interesting.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure to share it with my friends once it's announced. Awesome. Is there anything else related to like DNK or Hoppers in terms of like recent developments or things that you're most, I guess like if there's a digital nomad that's interested in visiting Korea and the best place for them to like get plugged in, is it the like Digital Nomads website, or what is the best way for them to like learn
if
more
they join the website, then if they visit the website, there is a join the community button. So you have to fill up a short survey. Then you will get access to our Discord and WhatsApp group.
Gotcha.
Where people are like doing spontaneous events. We also post events there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
One thing, because you said like, is there anything to add? One thing I want to add is about like our recent direction. Is that we're really looking into how we're really trying to focus on expanding the Digital Nomads Korea community. Cool. I forgot to mention that.
What do you mean by expanding? Just adding more members, or like going to different cities, or all the above?
Going to different cities, like, so when we do hop in Busan or Jeju, like we want to expand the community so that could be more sustainable. Not only our program, but this DNK and hop in goes together. So cool. DNK meaning like we also want to connect more the local and expats living in that area. So it can be a more like ongoing community, not only for just like 1 month event. So we're working on that. And also we want to make a more like structured community. And I was very inspired by Cambridge, actually, how you host the events, because I never hosted like a very structured event. It was always kind of casual, like, oh, we sometimes like we just post like this bar, let's hang out. And I don't like grabbing the mic and getting attention. I'm very introverted. But when I saw you doing like hosting and making people present, I was very inspired. And I think like, oh, I should do that as well, because I really want to share the stories of the digital nomads in our group. And that is, I think, the strength we have in our community. And bringing more locals who want to learn about their stories. And that's why they're coming to our community. But I always thought about it like, oh, I want to do this, but I never like make that move of like, okay, like I'm going to hold a mic, or I want to make a very structured event of our meetup. But I realize like more and more now, like this is what people want, and I should better like host a better event by making more structured. And also hearing a lot of hearing feedback from the participants and what they want, how they want to connect with others. So we're working on that aspect a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's funny that you say the structure around the Cambridge event, because a lot of it was like last minute trying to put everything together, you know? But I think people do appreciate like a presentation portion where people kind of gather together to hear whether it's like stories or different projects that people are working on. And then it makes the like mingling portion a lot easier for them. Maybe at some point, if you're open to it, there could be like a Digital Nomads Cambridge event where like different digital nomads could like share their own stories to the Cambridge community. And you guys should think about, I mean, it's a lot of work and effort to like start a podcast, but I imagine if you had like a Digital Nomads, you know,
I really
Korea
want
podcast.
to do it, but I just don't have the courage.
You can do it. I believe. I feel like it would be interesting for me to hear some of their stories as well, you know, and especially because Seoul has so many people that like come and go. And it keeps things interesting, I think, from like meeting new people all the time. Like even for the Cambridge event, there were like 75 people at this last event, and over half of them, it was their first time. They hadn't been to the prior event. And because a lot of people from the first event ended up leaving, and a lot of new people ended up coming. So I think that keeps it pretty like interesting and fun. It's not, you know, the same people every single time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, you'll have to keep me posted on the developments in 2025, and I'm rooting for you and DNK and Hoppers. So thanks for doing the podcast.
Thank you.